Hi, I'm Savvy. I've been writing my devotional Fear, Beautiful and Biblical for the past few weeks, and I just want to make this video explaining my process for writing, how I've been talking it through with God, how I've been writing it so that it appeals to a more preteen or teen audience like myself, and showing you how I put my thoughts on paper. Today, I want to be walking you through day 4 of my third section. I have 3 sections total, each with 6 days. Day 4 is part of the Fear of God section, where I'm going to be talking about Malachi 3:16. So I've already picked this verse because ahead of time I went ahead and did all my pre-writing and drafting and picked the verses that I would be using for my devotional. I went through and I worked through a lot of verses that I knew were about fear, and I kind of categorized them into sections and then decided whether or not they would work for what I was trying to communicate. Malachi 3:16 I felt like fit very well into my Fear of God section, but just to make sure that I'm completely on the same page, I'm going to reread Malachi 3:16 in NIV, because I researched and it said NIV is the best for teens and preteens to process. I'm going to be reading the section that it comes through, and then I'm going to be praying and just taking some time to kind of process it with God, make sure that my thoughts are both my own struggles, my own opinions, but also God's truth. And really, the words are coming from Him and not me, even if they are built off of my own experiences and thoughts. So I'll get working on that right now, and I'll talk to you in a second. Okay, so now I've reread the verse in NIV along with the rest of the passage and kind of sat with it, with God, and thought it through. And honestly, this one was really interesting. It was a good one that I picked to review because I can kind of explain to you why it's extremely important to A, read the verse in NIV, B, read the passage, and C, pray with God. I read this verse originally in the King James Version and just kind of was like, oh, great, this fits in well. We're talking about how God remembers those who fear Him. But now that I've read it in the NIV version, there's so much more clarity in the wording, which is exactly what the research I did told me. It would give me more clarity as a teenager to share it with teenagers and preteens. And then also, I read the passage, and the first time I read it, I kind of was like, I didn't really understand it. I read it with my best attempt to understand it, but was figuring that maybe it wasn't as much of importance as the specific verse I picked. And then with my time with God, I was thinking on the verses, and I was like, remembering that in the passage before the one I've picked, it was talking about the arrogance of Israel. And I just kind of skipped over it, didn't really think much of it. But in my prayer with Jesus, I was remembering that we're talking about how fear is a humbleness, how fearing the Lord means you're having a humbleness for the Lord. And God directly follows the passage about fear. He follows that, or before that, He talks a lot about the arrogance of Israel. So what God is painting a picture of here is that arrogance is the opposition of fear. He's helping the reader to create this image of, okay, fearing the God is humbleness, and what's the opposition of humbleness is arrogance. So that was really cool to kind of think on while I was in prayer. And I'm really excited because now I feel like I have a good place to start with my writing. For day 3, we talked a lot about how, day 2, we talked a lot about how the Proverbs 1:7, which says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, fools despise wisdom and instruction. Basically saying that the opposition of knowledge is the hate of instruction. So the opposition of humbleness is arrogance. This is really cool. Creates this push and pull of like God's using opposites to paint these like clear pictures, which for preteens, this is super helpful, like for them to help like process what this means, because I think the Bible is wonderful, but I think when you get into those big King James words and writing, it can kind of be hard to understand. But God has equipped me with this perfect way to present arrogance versus humbleness. So now I'm going to begin to write the first passage. The first passage of my devotional is, or of this specific day, but of all days, is explaining what the verse means. So in the context of where it is in the Bible, maybe it's not super clear even in the NIV, I kind of can explain what the verse means. Even if it's not a perfect description, it comes from my understanding of the verse, even if I don't totally get it, and I make sure I make it clear that I am a sinner myself, and I'm learning myself, and just trying to explain it in a way that I think it could be explained to me that would help me understand. So I'm going to work on that first section right now. Okay, so I just finished writing the first paragraph of this devotional. I wrote it a lot. Like, it's a lot longer than they typically are because I really wanted to emphasize the beauty of the arrogance, the passage on arrogance versus the passage on humbleness, and about how fearing God means being humble. I did a lot of jumping back and forth between my writing and the Bible to make sure that I was actually accurately speaking on what the verses were saying instead of what I just remembered it as being. I even Googled the definition of arrogance at one point because I really wanted to make sure that everything I was saying was truthful and honest to the best of my ability. I'm going to start working on the second section now, and this section is going to be about how, like, teens and preteens, how this applies to their life, right? Like, okay, now we know what the fear of God is in Malachi, specifically how it's defined in Malachi. What does that mean for me as a preteen? And so in this passage, I want to talk a lot about how, like, humbleness is very hard, especially in a world where we're kind of pushed that, like, internet influencer world where it's like, post about yourself, take pictures of yourself, and kind of how to be humble, be to like more gentle, more willing to listen to God and others, honestly, and just like how that is fearing God, and how fearing God in that way is extremely beneficial. So I'm gonna start working on that right now. Okay, so now that paragraph 2 is done, I get to move on to the third part of my devotional writing, which is questions to challenge the reader. Some of the best devotionals I've ever read have some really deep questions that allow me to kind of ponder, chew on what I just heard. And I really, really want this devotional to be something that girls wrestle with. That was something a youth pastor always told me is it's good to wrestle with a verse, to wrestle with a lesson, a message. So I'm going to work on picking out a few of the most important things in this passage and writing some really powerful questions that I think will challenge the readers, that aren't just yes or no questions, but more like, what does this mean for you, or when? And yeah, I'm going to work on that right now. Okay, so I I just wrote 3 questions. Sometimes the number of questions can fluctuate with what I really think the student needs to be challenged with. Typically, on average, I write about 3 or 4 questions, but for this section I wrote 3, especially because I feel like I threw a lot of information at them. I wanted the questions to be less, but still just as in-depth, but easier to process with everything that I just put on this page. The last part of this devotional is that I like to write a prayer, except in my experience, as I've read devotionals, I found that the best devotionals, the best prayer sections of devotionals, trail off because they offer students a chance to not just stick to a script on the page, but to kind of build off of what's being said, add their own personal thoughts, their own personal struggles, maybe what they connected with most, maybe what they didn't understand, just stuff like that. So typically I'll start with a greeting to God. I'll insert a leading thought that surrounds the idea of the verse that I've just talked on, and then I'll end it with ... and then amen. And that is the very end of my devotional. And that's how I write one of the days of my devotional. Starting with the verse, where I look it up in NIV, read the entirety of the passage and sit and pray with God. Where I move to the first paragraph, writing about what the verse means in the context of the Bible, in the context of my prayer with God, my own personal thoughts. The second paragraph, where I talk about how it can be applied to a teen or a preteen's life, how they can carry this knowledge in a way that's not just shallow. My questions that are deep, searching, pulling at something that maybe is within their hearts, challenging them to think on their heart posture, on the way that they've been acting, the way they've been speaking, specifically in this case, to the Lord. And finally, the prayer, just guiding the students in a small format of prayer before finally closing everything down. The next step is I will send all this over to my mentor for review, and she'll mark it up, and I'll show you how I work through my marked up devotionals later. All right, bye-bye.